Welcome to the selfgrowth.com show. My name is David Ricklin, and I'm the founder of selfgrowth.com. Today, we'll be discussing emotional brilliance, living a stress-less, fearless life. To help us understand this topic, I'm excited to interview Dr. Relly Nadler and Dr. Kathy Greenberg. Make sure to listen closely. We're going to be sharing a lot of information today. And I want to give out a website link. We're going to tell you about a little bit later, but it's going to be a special opportunity for you. And I'm going to ask people just to jot this down right now. We'll come back to it later. It's EB for Emotional Brilliance, eblifebook.com, eblifebook.com. And keep that on the side. We'll get back to it in a little bit. Before we get started, I want to take a couple of minutes and share some information about Dr. Relly Nadler and Dr. Kathy Greenberg. Dr. Kathy Greenberg and Dr. Relly Nadler are the co-authors of a new book, Emotional Brilliance, Living a Stressless, Fearless Life. They've both been co-hosts of the Leadership Development News podcast for 13 years, where they have over 4 million downloads from 45 countries. They're both emotional intelligence experts and on the faculty of the College of Executive Coaching. Kathy is the co-author or author of 9 books, founded 4 consultancies and 3 leadership institutes. She's worked as a senior consultant for Accenture Consulting. She's an executive coach, strategic coach, and trainer who's worked with special operations, special forces, healthcare, financial institutions, and more. Relly is an author or co-author of 7 books, has a blog on Psychology Today, a licensed psychologist, master certified coach, and our emotional intelligence expert on selfgrowth.com, and Emotional Expert of the Year for the International Association of Top Professionals. He's worked with many executive teams, helping to create better teams and better leaders. Kathy and Relly, welcome to our show.
Happy to be here.
All right.
Thank you, David. Looking forward to it.
All right, we want to jump right in. So we're talking about emotional brilliance. How did you decide to write this book on emotional brilliance?
Well, David, the reality is both Relly and I have been using the term emotional brilliance since 2014. Originally, it was an outpouring of work that I had been doing with Special Forces and a lot of other companies as well on the subject of being fearless. The Fearless Leaders group is my organization. And oddly enough, we found that when people truly use their talents and their skills in an emotionally brilliant way, they deliver on their talents much more effectively. And so I thought to myself, how can we take what we know about emotional intelligence and an evolution of human behavior that we're now experiencing and create something that's very powerful that targets emotional intelligence?
All right, I like the concept. So one of the things I'd like to do is take a few minutes and differentiate. A lot of people have heard the term, you're emotional intelligence experts, and many people have heard the term emotional intelligence. It's part of our vernacular now. You know, people have become comfortable with it. What differentiates EI or emotional intelligence from emotional brilliance?
Thanks, David. I can speak to that. You know, Kath and I do a lot of emotional intelligence work with a variety of assessments. You know, I have a book called Leading with Emotional Intelligence. But this concept of emotional brilliance, what we're trying to get is what is the actual behaviors, actions, what do you tell yourself in this moment? We're in a challenging time now that leaders that we deal with have to speak to their organization. What do they do to get them ready for that? What's the prompt? How do they prepare themselves? So we're calling this kind of this go-to, and you take all your strengths, you take all your EI competencies, and which ones do you move? Which ones do you select? Do you summon forward in that moment to be brilliant? So it may be different for each person, but it's that a couple of the analogies we use are a target, and the bullseye would be your emotional brilliant actions, reactions. Outside the target would be all the different competencies. So that's one that we like to use. The other one that both Kathy and I have fun with is in your closet, you have all these clothes. Kathy's smiling. You have all these clothes. And let's say, like for today, what did you select to be on camera? Or if you're going to be with your friends, what did you select out of all that great clothes that you have. So picking the right thing for the right time to get the right response. That's emotional brilliance.
Right. It almost sounds like it's applied emotional intelligence, where
Very good.
you're learning and really teaching how to apply the right tool in this big basket of tools that you have to the particular situation, the particular person, the particular issues going on. Would that be a good way to describe it?
That's really good. We're going to use that one more. Pulling it out of the basket. Good one, David.
All right. So applied emotional brilliance. You need to get that website also. The next website.
Right.
So what I'd like to talk about are things going on right now. Right now is a tough time for a lot of people. We're in arguably one of the most turbulent times now that we've experienced in our lifetimes. And first start with COVID-19 and what's going on, coronavirus and the pandemic. And now add on top of it the protests going around the country and the world. These are worldwide relative to George Floyd and what happened with him and the police. There's just a lot of things going on, and everybody's emotions, everybody's on edge. Everybody's emotions are heightened. Relative to what you're doing with the book, Emotional Brilliance, and everything you're doing, who do you see relative to what's going on as kind of a main audience for the book? And how do you see Emotional Brilliance and the book specifically helping people as we're dealing with all the things going on?
David, I'm going to take a stab at that first because this is very near and dear to my heart, given the fact that I teach at the Public Safety Academy in Southern Florida, and we have over 96 agencies that we work with. What I want to share with you is think about this. We have had a very large population of young people who have been out of work, who have found no purpose in their lives, technically speaking, other than being with loved ones or friends. And that pent up energy, as you can imagine, right, is now being released to them. I'm talking about the protesters, not the rioters, in a very positive way. They're out there taking a stand for something that they feel is important to them, right, wrong, or indifferent. Okay. Now, that's the backdrop for many of the other things that are occurring. And of course, COVID was the beginning of it. And I'm sure as Relly will add to this, one of the things that we wanted to do with this book is not make it a practitioner book. There are a lot of great coaching books out there. We wanted the mom who is home with her kids working from home. We wanted, the dad who's usually out there helping his kids build things and go to soccer games. We wanted everybody, including leaders, okay, from the boardroom to the battlefield, have an opportunity to use a quick and easy tool to help themselves, their families, their communities, and their colleagues.
Okay, I like it. Relative to how would they be using this book? Do you have a general sense on, so that might give you a sense of who this is for, basically anybody who's struggling with it. How would someone use the knowledge and information that you're sharing in the book relative to these issues you're talking about?
And I'll take a stab at that one. So I think it's got some really good stories of people who, and we'll share some managing emotions that we've interviewed them, some on our show, other times outside. What do they do in these kind of challenging moments? What do they bring forth? So we got some really motivating stories about that. And then we also have a model that we have introduced, and people will get a good sense of the model. And then we have a whole platform that will give them more tools. But I can say a word about the model that we have. There's been a lot of models, as you said, David, around emotional intelligence. Kathy and I have been working in this field for, around emotional intelligence itself for 25 years as consulting with big groups, organizations, even longer. And so the model we use is the acronym of NAME, N-A-M-E. So you think about what you said, David, people are feeling a lot of things. So how do they go through it? So the N is notice and name it. The A is accept it. The M is manage it. And the E is express it. So I'll give you an example, kind of as Kathy was saying, with all the protesters now, what are they feeling? N, name it. outrage, anger, frustration,
Sure.
helpless. Okay. And then how do you accept that? And many times we don't want to accept some of those feelings, kind of leaning in. There's a lot around racism these days. We know about implicit biases. And even for us, being white, some of this is accepting that we may have bias. When we first hear it, no, I don't have a bias, but we do. And so whatever the emotion is, the A is accept, you lean into it, whether it's comfortable or uncomfortable, lean into it. It helps you then to deal it with is the M, manage it. And then we have tools. How do you manage your thoughts? You know a lot about that. You have things on self-growth. How do you manage your actions? The protesters now are in the M. They're managing their actions and they're saying, okay, I'm going to show up. I'm going to take 9 minutes of silence being on the ground. And then the E, I think, is really interesting for all of us now. How do you express it? Do you express it? The CEOs now that I'm dealing with and Kathy's dealing with, what if you don't express it? What does that mean? There's a good quote, that I saw today, and this is the E for express. So all of us have to kind of deal with how do we express this outrage? How do we express this anger? How do we express this frustration? And this is, there are times we must speak, not because you're going to change the other person, but because if you don't speak, they have changed you. Silence doesn't change the world, it changes us. And so you see it, and I see it, Kathy sees it. If you don't say something, the E for our name model, people going, this is your opportunity. You need to speak up. And I love that. Silence doesn't change the world, it changes us. So people are struggling with the E. So the model really encapsulates your emotions, how to manage it. Do you express it? How do you express it?
I like it. It's simple to remember also.
Right.
And the interesting thing is, you're starting with N, name, and it goes back to one of my strong beliefs that self-awareness is a starting point.
Yep.
For a lot of this. And obviously that ties back into
Yeah.
Emotional intelligence in general. And it sounds like you're really helping people develop a system in place that gets them through these pieces, gets them through the challenges they're facing. So what I'd like to do is kind of follow up a little bit on that. You started mentioning some emotional stories. I know your book is full of stories. Just give people samples of how to express and their emotional brilliance and how to differentiate and what to do. And I know in the book, you start off with an unlikely story about, I think he's an extreme fighting champion, Conan, I think it's Silveira, Marcus Conan Silveira, extreme fighting champion, ultimate fighting championship. You don't necessarily think of that kind of person in terms of emotional intelligence. And you talk about him in the book. Can you tell our audience about how he's an example of emotional brilliance?
If you can just place yourself in a cage fighter's position for 1 minute and think about the preparation that you have to take and be a master of all of your emotions in front of thousands of people in the stadium with you and millions of people watching you on network television. And think about what that takes to be vulnerable, to walk into a cage with an adversary or an opponent, and you are now going to pummel the living daylights out of each other. But it's not for joy, it's for a sport.
Right.
And so you have to be able to be in control of every emotion you feel, regardless of what's going on around you. So you talk about having to use emotional intelligence. Conan is an amazing man. He is a large man. I think he's about 6'6". And now as the UFC champion coach for the women's world champion, I have to tell you, this man is an amazing example of emotional brilliance. He talks about walking into that cage with every ghost you can imagine. And he says, you cannot fear them. You cannot be angry at them. You must befriend every one of your feelings, no matter what they are, positive or negative, and embracing them, taking them with you, talking to them, understanding how they play a role in your life. because, as I'm sure you can understand, empathy in the wrong place can get you hurt. And being fearful at the wrong time can cause you to get hurt. So being very, very cautious and mentally aware, mindful at every moment during those 3 5-minute sessions in the cage, you have to be brilliant in the moment each and every time.
Makes total sense. And one of the interesting things, as I was listening to you, I was thinking that a big part of it is not denying, talking about these ghosts or all these things going on. You can't deny them. You have to accept them. And then you need to figure out how to manage it. Because it's very easy with all the things going on to put your head in the sand, to deny it, to hide. But emotional brilliance sounds like it's a concept of really facing these things head on.
And what's interesting, Dave, I should tell you, is that a lot of these fighters, and one that I've worked with most recently, Andrei Arlovsky, who has pretty much, he has won records that are just world record breaking. He's been in the cage more than anyone else. He does television, he does movies. This is a man who has a huge repertoire of capability. And the little bit that you see of him, known as the pit bull in the ring, is a small portion of what these human beings are truly capable of.
So it goes back to what you're talking about. We have this toolkit. It's a matter of understanding what pieces in our toolkit we need to be applying and when.
Yeah.
And it sounds like one of the things you really focus on with your book, Emotional Brilliance, is teaching people how to understand that and how to really step through that.
Yep.
I like the concept.
It kind of goes to what we're going to talk about, kind of this go-to. And just like you said, some of us have incredible successes. And so what do you summon? What do you retrieve? What do you pull out of that basket? Other people who maybe are newer in leadership, what do you need to develop? And so that may be something that you haven't had success with, but on both sides around emotional brilliance, what do you summon? You already have it. What do you need to develop? And then we have tools for each of those. And this, I think what'll have a fair amount of resonance for people is this go-to. And so I'll say a couple words about that. In each situation, when Kathy and I do coaching, and we use this as a tool, in this situation, what's your go-to? It may be a value. It may be an action. It may be a self-statement. It may be a visualization. You think about Conan. And I think then how it brings in some of the research we know about emotions and emotional intelligence. In today, it may be for the CEO talking to everybody because he's deciding he's not going to be silent. How does he prepare himself? It may be bringing up compassion, bringing up empathy. And it's this, how do you prime yourself? So let me have all my compassion and my empathy as I'm speaking, because that's what I want people to get. So really identifying that go-to is critical, because everything happens in the moment. And the more they know about themselves, like Conan, befriending his ghosts, it's going to allow them to have a great output. So a lot of it's around input, output, and the go-to is on the input. Where do I go? How do I retrieve it? What do I develop? What do I bring forth? So my output is just the perfect response in that situation. That's emotional brilliance.
And David, I just want to add to that. So for me, my go-to is to adapt quickly or be disappointed. So that's my go-to. I know that no matter what circumstance I'm in, I have to practice that adaptability, because if I don't, something will occur that's eventually going to disappoint me.
And I'll give you mine, David, then we'll ask you, because this will be good. So my go-to, and again, it's every situation, is really trying to be curious. So if I'm working with someone and there's issues going on, for me, curiosity allows me to develop empathy, and it takes away judgment, and it really allows me to be present. So we'll put you on the spot, kind of like for today, or I'm sure you got a bunch of stuff. What's kind of your go-to in dealing with a challenge?
My initial go-to, and I'm a bit analytical, is to delve in and get more information.
Okay.
Regardless of what it is, and to ask people to explain or get a better understanding.
Right.
And that's always where I start. And in part, it's so I really want to understand, because people get very emotional about things, and I really want to understand where they're coming from, because it helps me and it helps them. But one of the things that jumps out at me is that I think everybody naturally has a go-to. There's already a natural go-to, but a lot of times that natural go-to is very destructive. Yeah, the natural go-to for some people, you're being confronted, is to fight back. Some people it's to fight back. Some people it's to run. You know, and that natural go-to isn't necessarily the best go-to for them. And it sounds like that one of the real focuses of emotional brilliance is you talk about the tools, you talk about a system in place, but to help people figure out what the best go-to is going to be in certain situations. So when they're facing those situations, they're actually going to use those tools versus what their typical gut might be, which could be destructive.
Yep. And I think it's the difference of being on autopilot, which we all are, and being very volitional and intentional. So giving tools to say, oh, I'm in this situation, I need to bring something, and having that preparation ahead of time, that awareness, like you're saying, is critical.
Right. I got you. So I talked a little bit earlier about a website. I want to give that out, and then I want you to share a little bit more information about it. I know it's coming out soon. And the website for everybody is EB for Emotional Brilliance, eblifebook.com, eblifebook.com. Can you tell us when's the book coming out? Where can they get it? Tell us a little bit about it. And I know I think there's some incentives, some bonuses you're providing. Tell us what you got going on.
Thanks, David. Yeah, we're very excited, and we wanted to make this available to everybody. Right now, the book is available. It is on Amazon as a promotion for 99 cents between now and June the 9th. And with that 99 cents, you also get some free bonuses. Relly and I were just so passionate about making sure that anybody could pick up this book, that anybody could afford it. And it's so full of tools and self-help, and it takes you for free to the website called eblifebook.com, which also has take actions in it. So the ebook, the Kindle book, is actually full of links. We have over 19 take actions that you can do, over a dozen neuro tips that you can practice, and it comes with the price of the book. It's available now on Amazon. You will get the book, however, if you order it between now and June 9th for 99 cents, and it will be delivered right to your mailbox.
Okay, I like it. So just to reiterate, the website is eblifebook.com. And for 99 cents, I see it as a no-brainer for folks. Anybody who this concept resonates with that's listening right now, go check it out, make the investment. There's a lot of really powerful tools. We only got a couple more minutes. Any other stories you want to share?
I'll just say something in kind of closing here. I think when I'm talking with executives and leaders, I'm really trying to emphasize this is your time that you're building your legacy. This is the Super Bowl of leadership. It could be the Super Bowl of parenting. Meaning this is what years from now, they're going to look at how you responded. And not only responded, how did you make them feel? Because everybody, as a psychologist, our organization, our world is highly anxious. What do you do as a parent? What do you do as a leader? What do you do as a manager? First, to manage that anxiety, because no one's going to hear you if they're highly anxious. So that's where the emotional intelligence, emotional brilliance comes in. Then you could get to supporting them, problem solving, solution finding.
I would just like to add that we have powerful stories in the book, and they are a reflection of a very multicultural, multi-gender, multi-age age group. We have CeeLo Green, we have Michael Vick and what happened with his experience in the NFL and dogfighting. CeeLo Green's story is about his song, Forget You. Good story behind that. We have a story about Father Michael Mannion, Monsignor Michael Mannion, who worked with Mother Teresa for 28 years, a good colleague of mine. We worked together for the FBI and chaplain for law enforcement. There are amazing stories about women who wanted to do things differently and found a way to help their handicapped children actually walk when they were told they never would. The stories in this book are so profound. We have George Pirro, who was the investigator and the interrogator for Saddam Hussein. and the 7 months he spent with him. So we have an array of very powerful stories, and one of them I know will touch each and every one of your audience and beyond.
All right, sounds good. Well, I'd like to thank both of you for joining us. A lot of useful information, emotional brilliance. I love the concept. Recommend once again, everybody go out and get this book, 99 cents right now. No reason not to. And I want to thank everybody for listening. Thank you for coming. And I want to wish everybody great success in all areas of your life. We'll talk to everybody soon. Take care.